Our next speaker is Valery Chalidze, an American attorney who was a trial lawyer for 30 years before entering academia, and currently she is a senior research fellow at the Peace and War Center at Norwich University and also full-time faculty at Vermont State University. Her areas of expertise include development and maintenance of the rule of law in the United States and abroad, and moreover, she is the widow of a remarkable historical figure, Valery Chalidze, who was the co-founder with Andrei Sakharov of the Human Rights Committee in Moscow in 1970.
I prefer to walk and talk. The story of Valery Chalidze begins even before time, before Gorbachev, before cell phones, before Trump, before COVID, before the USSR became the Russian Federation, and before we became the divided states of America. Back when the battlefield was bright and he knew who the good guys were, so that he could play his self-described role as a soldier in the Cold War. And so, once upon a time, a Georgian prince was born in Moscow. Prince, the KGB addressed him respectfully, because he was, but he was influenced at a very early age by the father of Soviet constitutionalism, Alexei Volpin. The two met in Moscow after Volpin had returned from one of his many internments in the Gulag, and each recognized a kindred spirit in the other. They devised a secret code so that the next time Volpin was sent to the Gulag, which unfortunately they both anticipated and correctly, they could communicate in letters that read benignly on the surface. It worked. They communicated for years while Volpin was in the Gulag again. And when Volpin came back to Moscow, as you can imagine, it was a joyous reunion. Volpin joined the Moscow Human Rights Committee, which Chalidze had co-founded with two other physicists, Andrei Tverdokhlebev and Andrei Sakharov. The committee chose as its vehicle a sort of ultra, hyper, super pure legality, to the point where not only was it foreign to many other dissidents, it was almost comical. The great Lyudmila Alexeyeva wrote in her memoir that when she was first allowed into the inner sanctum of Volpin Chalidzeism, she giggled. They followed the Roberts Rules of Order at their meetings. This was quite foreign for the time. Ben Nathans, in his wonderful Pulitzer Prize-winning recent book, To the Success of Our Hopeless Cause, described this hyperlegality. And even the CIA, in a classified report tracking the activities of the Moscow Human Rights Committee with admiration, noted that their founding principles, being intensely legalistic, were actually, and I quote, rather dull reading. But the results were anything but dull. The results were firework, and I am here tonight to make the case that those principles and that movement, Soviet dissidents, the Human Rights Committee, is incredibly relevant, inflaming with potential today in this country to defend us against the erosion of the rule of law that we are facing every minute of every day on every front. I'm going to give you a little lesson. I'm going to dip into what I think of as my Volpen-Chalidzeism user's manual. They developed this great legalist strategy. You take a social problem, you analyze it legally, and you produce a written legal analysis. Yawn, yawn, boring, boring, no, no, no. Let's take an issue that I suspect will resonate in this room, and that is immigration. Let me ask you a question. Do people who are in this country and do not have citizenship have rights under the U.S. Constitution? I see a nod. What are you thinking? They actually do, and this has been the state of the law since 1903, when a nice Japanese man who was here legally was the subject of a deportation proceeding. And the Supreme Court said in 1903, well, yeah, he's not a citizen, but he's subject to our laws. He's subject to our jurisdiction, and we're the ones administering our laws and enforcing our laws. So it's kind of on us to do it right. Doesn't matter who he is. It matters who we are and who we want to be. And so, said the Supreme Court in 1903, this fellow has the right to a hearing before we ship him out. Since then, there have been many more cases that have fleshed out the spectrum of rights that have been recognized as protecting immigrants who are in this country legally. They include all kinds of stuff now. But what about people who are in this country without permission? What about people who are here illegally? Do they have rights under our Constitution? I'm hearing some no's. They do. Yes, they absolutely do. Because once again, our conduct as a nation, our compliance with the Constitution does not depend on the target. It does not depend on who we suspect, who we are looking at. No, this is about us. It's not about them. And over the years, over the decades, the U.S. Supreme Court has held consistently that even people who are in this country without permission have constitutional rights. Who'd have thunk? And now, one of the final notes I want to make, I want to just shift the lens slightly, still under the rule of law banner, which is what I have carried my whole life. My heart beats as a rule of law heart. I think I've died without it. And I will ask you, does the federal government, in its crisis management of this immigration emergency we have the authority to ignore local and state law? Can the feds come in and do what they want? Spoiler, no. Think of, and I hate this name, but it's the official name, Alligator Alcatraz, an emergency ICE detention center thrown up in a swamp in Florida with prefab walls and a prefab roof. Well, oops, ICE, i.e. the federal government, did not get permission from the local authorities to build a building. They didn't apply for a building permit. How boring. A building permit? You gotta be kidding me. We're ICE. We're the federal government. We're dealing with a crisis. We don't need a building permit. Well, yeah, you do. And that's what a federal court ruled. You not only need a building permit, you have to comply with safety codes. You need a smoke detector over there. What? And here's a shocking fact. You need toilets that flush. What? True story. And before you can even start building, you need to do an environmental review because you're building in the bayou. You're building in the Everglades, one of the great environmental treasures of our country. You don't get to just waltz in and do that. You pay your fee, you apply for your permit, you are subjected to a pre-construction review, even if you are the federal government. And so, I will conclude with the moral of the story. Now that you've seen a little bit from the Valery Chalidze users manual, the moral of the story is that true dissidents do die, but they never get old. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Lisa. Honored to have you here, and a very important reminder that the legacy of Soviet dissidents, including Volpin and Chalidze, thinking about the rule of law as the core of where we need to move, is the antidote to the lawlessness that we have entered, the age of lawlessness that we have entered into, and our defense against it.